There are a lot of cruel things in the grim darkness of the far future. There's planet-killing weapons, Xenos coming to take their share of the galaxy, and demons that hunger for the souls of mortals. But there are very few things that can match the cruelty of the Butcher's Nails. The archaeotech cybernetics that broke a primarch and damned a legion. Today, we are diving deep into the Butcher's Nails. What are the Butcher's Nails? The Butcher's Nails are cybernetic neurological implants that resemble a series of cables that are implanted into sections of the recipient's brain. It looks similar to a lobotomy, and its primary purpose is to enhance the rage and anger of the subject, to make them more effective killers. But in reality, it rewired the brain to where everything inflicted pain. Thinking, calm emotions, feeling, and even breathing causes pain. Only aggression ceased the pain and gave the implanted pleasure. Where was this discovered? This was used on the gladiator slaves on the world of New Syria, the home world of the World Eater's primarch, Angron. And the whole reason this was done on New Syria was for entertainment and obedience. The nails would get the slave warriors to fight without fear and concern for their own well-being. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this would make fights interesting, but for the ones with these crude implants, life became a living hell where they only got pleasure from fighting, killing, and utter violence. Now, how did Angron end up with these horrific devices shoved in his brain? And this was due to Angron defying his slave masters, or what he called them, the High Riders. Angron refused to kill the man who raised him and trained him in the arena after they fought together and slayed two enemy gladiators who were implanted with the Butcher's Nails. The High Riders, they still demanded more blood after their victory, and they wanted Angron and his tutor to fight each other to the death. Angron's punishment was to be implanted with the nails, so he would have no other thought than to kill and kill for pleasure's sake, and never defy the authority of the High Riders again. And you know what's the really sad thing about this? Is the crowd in the arena he fought in cheered, "Nails, nails, nails," as Angron was taken away to be implanted. The nails implanted in Angron were not meant for a complex brain of a primarch, and during Angron's surgery, much of his brain was scraped out. The nails replaced those pieces removed from his brain. Pretty diabolical. And since the nails in Angron's brain were not meant for him, they were fatal and they slowly killed him over time. Now, to be able to slowly destroy the brain of a primarch is crazy dangerous technology, and I'm surprised that the Emperor did not go back and just destroy Nysiria after finding this out. Now, Angron, before the nails, had a unique ability. He had supernatural empathy, or psychic empathy. Angron was able to psychically soothe the pain of the gladiators around him. Many theorize that Angron may have had the purpose to ease the pain that war brought on his legion, or to act as a sort of peacemaker for his brother primarchs, since they were all so different, but this is all just speculation because we know what happened to Angron at the end of the day. And in the fighting pits of the gladiator arena, Angron felt those in pain and dying, and it hurt Angron to kill and hurt those without a real meaningful purpose. But Angron, after the nails, became a storm of violence that would not tolerate challenge from anyone. He went on frequent episodes where he would kill his sons, and he would black out in an uncontrollable rage and could only be subdued by the Legion's librarians. Now, why didn't the Emperor just remove the nails, though? This was causing him immense pain. He would kill his legionnaires off the flip of a hat. Well, the Emperor did actually examine Angron. And after Angron was examined by the Emperor and the techno-archaeologist Arkan Land, they both saw how the Butcher's Nails ran deep into Angron's brain, spinal column, and was threaded in his very nervous system. What's even more grotesque is that his limbic lobe and insular cortex were a ruined mess from the surgery implantation and were pretty much just completely replaced with the butcher's nails. The nails that caused him so much pain were the only things keeping him alive, so the Emperor could not remove them without killing him. The very things that kept him alive were also the things that were slowly killing him. It really broke Angron, as he is commonly referred to as the Broken Primarch. He lacked the presence that comes with a Primarch, the awe that many Astartes feel, and the intense pressure from the gaze of the Emperor's sons. Angron did not care for his sons, and the Legion was thrusted upon him by the Emperor. He never felt any pride for any of them until Karn had the nails successfully implanted. This bridged the very gap between the Primarch and the Legion. Before the nails, the Warhounds, or the World Eaters, walked calmly as bonded brothers into war. They marched to war. They did not run or break formation. They were calm and even silent. They were very fond of the phalanx formation. They were a methodical killing machine. Their shields were their brothers beside them, for they protected each other just as well as any shield. But when Angron showed up with the butcher's nails, the World Eaters aspired to grow closer to their gene father. They wanted to have the nails pounded into their brains just like him. But now in the beginning, implementing them into Astartes were very fatal, a certain fatality. But Angron, being Angron, did not care about the fatality rate and continued to have new methods to be implanted with the butcher's nails. And Astartes would die trying to imitate their Primarch, but how was the Legion convinced of taking the butcher's nails? Why didn't Angron just have the butcher's nails and all the others were just regular Astartes? This is a terrible device, by the way, but this happened because Angron would set timers for the World Eaters to conquer a planet. He gave them 31 hours, and if they failed to do so, there would be a decimation. Now, what is a decimation? It is a punishment where Angron forced the World Eaters to execute 1 in every 10 of their battle brothers. So it was common amongst the 12th that without the nails, they were too slow. They could not reach these timers, and they needed to reach the battle focus that their Primarch achieved. Brotherhood and honor began to slow down their progress, and they constantly compared themselves to Angron. They would say, Angron would have not been slowed by bonds like we were. Angron would not have wavered or retreated to save the wounded and the compromised. The pure shame that they felt from not conquering a planet in time was worse than not being able to save each other in war. Nobility and sentiment became a weakness for the Legion. Galen, the chief apothecary of the World Eaters, eventually reverse-engineered and perfected the butcher's nail surgery. But not all World Eaters thought highly of this. Some World Eaters were very scared if the butcher's nails were implanted into every member of the World Eaters. They thought they would become mini Angrons, and we know what Angron was doing. So there was eventually a mini rebellion that broke out, and the World Eaters that denied the nails were called the Unbroken. They wanted to sabotage Galen's work, and they wanted to even take Angron into custody and take him to Terra so the Emperor could still find a way to remove the nails. So this was very funny because eventually this rebellion was ultimately crushed. It's very surprising, right? And those Unbroken who survived would bend the knee and suffer a reckoning sooner or later, because Angron does not tolerate betrayal. Now, we got the butcher's nails implanted into the Astartes now. After Galen's work, we know Karn was the first implemented one, but the butcher's nails did not look like Angron's. His nails were like dreadlocks that stretched across the scalp. The new nails were more like fine cables, but if I'm going to be honest, this is very inconsistent, as some artwork still shows them with the dreadlock-like cables. But let's move on to how these butcher's nails affected the World Eater Astartes. What effects did they have on an Astartes' brain? When Karn's nail implantation surgery was complete, he went into a complete berserker rage and killed everybody in the operating room. So, big surprise, once again. So when the nails were active, World Eaters would say the nails are biting, singing, or ticking. They began drooling or salivating uncontrollably. Their patience became short. Many mortals were advised to just avoid Astartes of the 12th Legion. The nails do have a downtime though. They were not crazed berserkers 24/7 all the time. There were moments where they did not inflict as much pain on the ones implemented with them. And as mentioned before though, with Angron, violence, anger, and the sight of battle can cause the nails to become active. And just like their primarch, the Butcher's nails implanted to Astartes would only get relief or pleasure from pure violence, rage, and aggression. Every other action and still moment was met with pain. So let's talk about the nails and Psykers. The Butcher's nails were negatively affected by psychic abilities. Regular Astartes felt more pain from the nails just being in the presence of a Psyker. In the beginning, librarians would undergo the implementation surgery as well, because they were world eaters. They wanted to be like their primarch. But the Legion quickly noticed that Psykers and their abilities were being dangerously affected by the nails. Some exploded with psychic flames and gore, and none of them lasted longer than a week. Librarians eventually opted out of the nail implantation surgery, but this led to them living isolated lives within the Legion. They were ignored and shunned. Many attempted to remove the nails, but they were fatal because the brain became dependent upon the nails. So the only role the librarians would have in the Legion was to calm Angron each time they would die doing so. And by the time the Horus Heresy started, there were very few Psykers left in the Legion. And eventually, Angron would kill all of the Psykers in the Legion. So that's why the World Eaters don't have Psykers, and obviously Khorne has something to do with that. But what did the other legions think about Angron and the World Eaters and the Butcher's Nails? The widespread word about the nails would eventually get out and how they were causing the 12th Legion to become destructive and spreading misery throughout the Imperium. World Eaters began massacring civilians and killing surrendering human adversaries. Leman Russ even confronted Angron about the nails and the Legion's destructive behavior during the event called the Night of the Wolf. Leman Russ said the Emperor instructed him to put a stop to the atrocities committed by the World Eaters, but it's really unclear if the Emperor actually sent Russ. Many of the World Eaters, including Angron, thought Russ just took it upon himself, being self-righteous. And eventually, during this, the Legion came to blows. Angron and Russ fighting like gods. Angron had Russ at his mercy, but was also surrounded by Russ's Legion, ready to fire upon Angron at any moment. The World Eaters did not fight with any unity through that whole event, and they let their Primarch get surrounded due to their loss to the nails. If Russ gave the orders, Angron would have died that day because he was so deep behind enemy lines, fighting Russ. And this battle really showed how the nails warped the World Eaters Legion and the true difference between the Warhounds and the World Eaters. Now, in the Heresy to the current setting, when Horus's rebellion arose, the World Eaters were ripe for corruption. They were ready. They were on the precipice of just falling to Khorne. They just needed a little tap, and they were Khorne berserkers. So pretty much just handed to Khorne on a silver platter. They murdered and slaughtered for pleasure, only could escape pain through violence, and they hated the Emperor. The World Eaters just kind of walked to Damnation willingly, pledging their service to the Blood God, and Angron became a demon prince of Khorne. And after the Heresy, in the current setting, the Butcher's Nails are still used and still implanted into new recruits. Some nails are removed from the skulls of the fallen World Eaters and are implanted into new recruits, so they're kind of just recycling them. It seems the world leaders, though, they never get used to the nails, the pain, as Karn still feels the burn, the biting, and the ticking of the nails. They still send him into crazed frenzies that causes him to slaughter any in his path. But at the end of the day, the nails just really created monsters. It shattered brotherhood, nobility, and kinship, and it destroyed what Astartes was supposed to be. The world leaders were fooled by their admiration of their Gene Father. The Unbroken that saw this coming died in vain, because their corrupted brothers would never look back, they would never think back or regret their decision, because all they can think about is silencing the tick, 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 tick with the blood of their enemies. If you enjoyed this video about the Butcher's Nails, please leave a like and let me know what you guys think about the Butcher's Nails, because they are truly fascinating and they really just make the world leaders really interesting. They're not just mindless berserkers, they do have a tragic story. But there are plenty of videos to come, so why don't you stick around to find out what else I got planned. Thank you for sticking around to the end. See ya.